You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Hello. Well, we have our judge segment, and very good morning to David Ashton Lewis, who I caught mid-sentence when I said we've got 5 seconds.
Yeah, look, no, you're right. Good morning to you, and good morning to everyone listening.
Look, it's a very important early stage of the month, and I'd be remiss not to recognise these 2 days, as it's a very important day in history, a very important day in Australia, and a very important day to many families. The start of World War II, 1st of September 1939, and the end of World War II on the 2nd of September 1945.
So 6 years later. And I know, we do spend a bit of time on military and the war, and I know some people are tired of it, but I would ask them to reflect. Most of us were born after 1945.
Sure.
And it was that generation of 19 to 21-year-olds who laid down the grounds, your family in Poland, my family in Australia and in England.
I think the best way to look at it is they afforded us the lifestyle and the lives we have today. So you can be thankful that the world looks the way it looks because of the sacrifices made.
I think so. So, yes, important that we do remember, just give a minute's reflection. And we've spoken before about these 2 generations. The First World War generation, which is the generation of my grandfather, they as young men went off to have a great lark, to see the world.
That's right. But they saw, the great adventure.
they saw horrendousness. And then their sons, my father, they went off in the Second World War, and we've recently celebrated, haven't we, the landings at Normandy.
Yes.
The average age of the Canadians, Americans and English landing at Normandy was 20.
Look, I think the other thing too is someone I've got an ancestry DNA test. It runs back, has a look at your where your origins are.
Yes,
you get this wonderful little map and so forth, but it also gives you the ability to have a quick look into your past. And it doesn't seem to me that there would be many people out there that don't have family members that were touched by World War II or served in World War II or even World War I.
Yes.
And again, you stand here today because of those people.
Most definitely, and correct. Now, I know people again get tired of it, and I know that some don't even like mentioning it. But I remind you, or you've all heard me say, the Cicero statement. So it is important that you at least acknowledge, where we live and the quality of life we live in was due in many parts to those 2 major conflicts. And of course today you want to discuss the 3 freedoms.
I do, but I was going to touch on finishing up on World War II. Yes. The issue for me is that looking back into history, some people wave their hand at it and go, oh, yes, no, that doesn't interest me.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
But the lessons of the past, we see it in just our own family, how our parents treated us or educated us, or their parents educated them. Well, it's the same with global history.
Yes.
How we evolved, the lessons we learn, the things that we see that were preludes to nasty things. And again, we have bullies in our school ground, but we also have bullies on the international scene. So all of these things are relevant into the way we look at the things that are transpiring today. But yes, the topic of the day, the 3 freedoms.
And they are?
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom to express yourself.
Well, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association.
Yes. Or expression? No, association is probably...
That's in freedom of speech, really.
Sure.
It's in it. And, of course, I think the thing we should start with, that people understand those freedoms are not absolute.
And that's a good point.
Yes, they're not absolute. We have defamation. We have... I don't know, but Colin is doing weird hand
You're
signals.
banging the desk again.
No, but we have defamation, which means you can't speak freely, you can't defame. We have freedom of association, but you can't form, for instance, outlawed in Australia is the Australian Nazi Party. You can't associate with them because you'll be in breach of the law. And of course, we have freedom of religion. And so when we look historically at the Roman Catholic Church up until the Reformation, if anyone did not belong to the Roman Catholic Church, it was a death sentence.
Yes.
So we've built up these three freedoms, but I'm proud to say we've built them up responsibly.
Yes.
I think that's it.
And I think that's probably a good point. Look, to me, freedom of speech is wonderful, and I go back to my uni days where we were exploring ideas and we were exploring ideals and thoughts and processes, and some of them were wrong, some of them needed work to become a great idea,
Yes,
some of them were just entirely rubbish. And again, you've got to think back, and I'm going back to history now. Marx wrote some wonderful volumes that turned out to read really well.
That's the key
Read
point.
really
well.
Now, do you think that he actually intended that to be anything more than
What
provoking of thought, or do you think that he
no.
wanted to change the world?
No, I think he thought, and you're right, I mean, Marx wrote beautifully, brilliant man, and he had an idea of good society that was fair and just, and that's the whole basis of dialectical materialism, which is the fundamental thing. But man has a tremendous habit of getting his hands in on something and damaging it.
Look, I like this one, and,
Yeah.
and you can see it with socialism and a few other things as well, and it's
Yes.
where our society is absolutely brilliant and where we need to catch ourselves.
Yes.
We pour in the human condition, and there
Yes.
are absolute pillars of society, and there are absolutely scourges of the world.
Yes.
And there's anywhere in between. Now, those people who are pillars of society will hold that volume up and say
Yes,
that I've got to do the best I can towards this ideology and make sure that the people are looked after. But will the next person do that?
That's
And
exactly
will the next
right.
person do that?
And this is why I always thought Bob Hawke was a unique man, because I'll never forget him. He'd only been in office for probably about 2 months, and he was doing a television interview, and he said, it's dawned on me that I am the Prime Minister for all Australians. That is, the people who are Labor Party voters, well, naturally, but I'm also the Prime Minister for those who would never vote Labor. And I think he showed through his life, with his sculling beer at the cricket, with the Richies in front of him, that he was in so many ways a man of all the people. So I think he was unique. Now, while we have these freedoms that we speak of, we seem to be slipping a bit in the concept, but I believe in the freedom to say or to do or to believe this. We must, when we do that, be aware of, but there are other people who are Australians who don't agree with me.
Look, you can take polarising statements and say that there's too many people on the planet and we're going to have to exterminate some of them. Now, you are going to get polarising statements out there. Well, people say, yes, we've got to do something, and then you get these people going, how dare you? Now, the issue is, this is a thought.
Yep.
It is only a thought. It is not an action. It is not like World War II, where so many million people died over an
72 million.
over an ideology.
Yeah.
Now, that's the thought here. Okay, we should be able to debate these things, should we not? And it shouldn't be about,
well, even if
you've offended me.
You're right. And even if we don't or can't debate it, we should always have in our own mind, now, there'll be people who don't agree with what I'm saying. I have to be aware of that. I have to take that into account. I will still express my view or associate or attend to the religion that is important to me. But I must be aware that there are people in our society who won't agree.
And that is
and
the
not
point.
just ignore them.
Look, freedom of religion, and again, this can be a polarising topic as well,
Yes.
is just the freedom to go and explore your religion. It is
Well,
not
follow your belief.
But it's not meant to force other people to believe
Well,
in
now,
what you
all
do.
religions have had real problems with that. I just mentioned the Roman Catholic Church up until the Reformation. And it was clearly meant there's one faith, and that's according to the doctrine and the teachings of Rome. Now, that'll be, look, anything that really grabs a person, gee, I really think that's right for me.
Yes, that's
they
right.
want to share it.
Yes, we're going to...
They never think of the other one who says, yeah, well, it might be right for you, but it's not right for me.
I often find that this one's the interesting one for me. We go back to our history once again, and, you know, I'm sure in the early 30s we heard these statements. Let's make Germany great again.
Well, they didn't use that statement, but they used similar statements, yes.
And we fast forward today and we've got to make America great again. And I think I even heard someone mumble, let's make Australia great again. And I really started to quiver in my boots.
Well, I don't think Australia's ever lost being great. I don't think the US has ever lost being great.
But let me ask you, David, if I was to say to you, what's right with Australia, what's wrong with Australia, there would be far more people who want to grumble, oh, this is terrible, this is terrible,
Would
this
there
is
be,
terrible,
do you
this is
think?
terrible. I'd actually like to see a conversation where they say, okay, you've finished your grumbling, now tell me what's great.
I think that's a good point. I mean, that's what you should say. Look, I hear you loud and clear. What you're saying you don't like, you dislike, you hate, and everything you think's wrong. I haven't heard you say to me, well, what is right?
That's right.
What is good?
I told you this morning on the way in that I did a little experiment.
No, you didn't. You growled at me this morning.
I potentially did. That I have come to the conclusion of watching mainstream media that it is just negative media and bash Labour.
Yeah, you told me. Yes.
Yes.
You told me you just made a clear decision not to watch television for a week.
Not to listen to the news, absolutely.
Not to listen to the news. Now, you used the right term, bash Labour. I'm sick to death of that. Now, that's probably more brought about by our adversarial politics.
Yes.
If the Liberal coalition is in government, bash them. And that's where I think we all have to step back and recognise there are people who don't agree with me. And I will state my view, and I may not accept their view, but I'll listen to. Remember the William Santayana statement. I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Absolutely. And look, one of the things that I've loved as an engineer or a scientist being trained in that way is that not to be afraid of mistakes, not to be, because you learn from them and you can then build upon that and fix the problem. We forever want to persecute or say he's to blame or that's terrible or that's negative. And we seem to refer this back to politics more often than not, but it happens in everyday life. We do need to have a good look at the other side of that coin. What are the positives? Let's talk about the positives so that we can get a bit of a yin and a yang, because it does balance each other out. We see it in the workplace. We see it in our social lives. If it's overly negative, you just don't want to participate.
Well, you get sick of it.
If it's very positive, you can't wait to get there. You can't wait to be involved.
Well, I think you're right. I think really, look, Australia to me is an even and balanced nation with even and balanced views. That's why we have a multicultural society. If we didn't have even and balanced views, we'd say, no, only Europeans, white.
Yes.
Only white, and that's it. Now, Gough Whitlam came in and finally challenged in 1972, it was never written anywhere, the White Australia policy. I remember going to school with Singaporeans, Taiwanese, Malaysians, Pacific Islanders. But they could only stay and finish school, and if they got into medicine or whatever, engine, they could do it, and they then had to go back. They couldn't live here. And I had about 4 or 5 friends from those varied areas who said, I'd love to stay in Australia. You're so lucky here. You have such a tremendous way of life, but we can't.
Yes.
Unless if they married a white Australian woman. And so that was wrong. And I mean, it took Labor, it took the more progressive side. And I can remember even the Liberals by 1970, 71 were talking about, we've got to stop this. We have to have multinational immigration. So we're a balanced nation and we eventually get there.
Look, society changes. It evolves. We've seen it here at 4CRB as we go through. We're a 50-plus station. I remember Hilton, who's now in his 90s, saying to me, the music's terrible now because we've had to make it agreeable to those 50-plus people moving in. So he started the station in his 50s. He's now 90. We can't continually play just to 90-year-olds, so we've had to progress. That's what happens with laws. That's what happens with governing. That is what happens with policy as certain things change.
Look, there it is. Certain things change. We don't live like our ancestors did in the medieval days. I don't ride a horse to work and get my employer to stable it. And I don't carry a sword on my hip to protect myself. I don't need to. So it's always a pressure. Don't always look back and see, it was far better then.
No, because it was just as hard.
I've met a number of people in their 80s and 90s who have said, don't listen to that. It was hard then. And it's hard now.
Yes, yeah, that's right. It is indeed. So going back to freedom of speech,
yes.
and probably a good point to make on this is, it doesn't mean that you can say just anything and everything.
Exactly right.
It does mean that you are entitled to air your views.
Express an opinion.
Yes, but it also means that other people have the right to challenge it.
They do. And we are currently, sadly, in a state of our society where there's not a great openness to my views being challenged or your views being challenged, and we see it in this thing called cancel culture. Now, I'm an adjunct professor of law.
Define cancel culture.
Well, if I don't... Yeah,
cancel
culture. It's happened a lot in the universities. If a lecturer gets up and says things that someone doesn't... I can give you a perfect example. I studied law with a man, he was in final year, 1968, I was in first year. He was a very good lawyer. He went on, he practiced in top solicitors' firms, but then he found that he preferred academia and writing. So he is a publisher, still today, of seminal works in certain areas of law. I won't say which areas. And he's now an emeritus professor. He made a statement in a class recently that you have to be careful with alcohol consumption because women can't consume or hold as much alcohol as a man.
Ooh.
Well, there was complaints against him where his contract was suspended. And he came to me and said, David, can you give me your view on this? And I said, well, what you said was right. It's medically established, and there's a couple of very senior Supreme Court cases where the judges held that. So we found the cases, read them, and the finding was that, and what do we have today in all media about good alcohol, responsible alcohol consumption? Sure. Men, 2 glasses of wine at night, standard glasses. Women, 1.
Okay.
1. Now, so he stated what is universally accepted as a fact. That was seen to be offensive to women, and so he's in effect being cancelled. He's had his contract.
I see what you're saying. And also cancelled The View as well, if you want. Now, we're cancelling the truth, though, aren't we?
Well, to me, now someone listening here might be offended to hear, that there's a challenge to that. But you are right. The established medical science still is, and gosh, if I researched this in the last 2 weeks. And so I will represent him in his speaking before the professorial board.
That's a very interesting one, David, because, I mean, if he said it as matter-of-factly as you stated or as directly as you stated, but then let's just look at an alternative view. Now, I'm about to say something and I'm not intending to offend.
Yes.
It is just a statement of fact. And then rolled out the statistic.
Yes.
Would we have had the gazillion complaints and him losing his job? And do you know what I mean? I don't mean to offend you, but here's a fact.
But a lot of American and Australian commentators say it's feelings that are now more important rather than fact.
That's right.
Now, I don't know whether that's true. I operate, certainly my feelings are important, but if my feelings are offended by what's established as fact, now you're an engineer, you're an empirical scientist.
And so 1 + 1 is 2.
You will know that, a certain grade of steel is just more appropriate for laying on a bridge that will carry at any one time over every square metre 5-ton weight.
Yes.
I once acted for a council where builders had built a bridge and they'd used the wrong grade steel. So the bridge collapsed and a couple of people were killed.
Oh, dear.
And then we had engineering specialist engineers come in and say, and one said, that grade steel, given the square metre of tonnage, was inappropriate.
Yes.
We had another expert evidence come in and say, no, it wasn't.
But look, that's very much like global warming now. And you can get some great experts who are paid well by someone to say yes and same with no.
Yes.
But again, theories are very different to proofs.
But we're talking about the end result. People can have different views, but we're living at a time where intolerance means you can't have a different view.
Sure.
Your view is wrong.
Look,
we've got to get away from that.
And it's even extending past views. You're right about its feelings and so forth.
Yes.
I read an article recently where stand-up comedy in the United States is falling by the wayside because people are being sued. You offended me.
Yeah, you offended me.
Now, you rewind 10 or 20 years, everybody was laughing and having a good time.
Well,
if you didn't like what was being said, you left.
Well, go and listen in the 60s to the comedy of a man called Lenny Henry. Oh, gosh.
I don't know him, unfortunately.
No, you've got to be... Well, the first other word is you've got to be tolerant.
Yes.
Tolerant of another view. But you have to know another view. And I think that's the challenge for us raising our children, our grandchildren. Be open. You've mentioned this many times on this show. University, when you went, certainly when I went, and I was there about 10 years before you, was, all right, want to know your thoughts. Do you agree or do you disagree? I remember professors getting really quite annoyed with, we used to have tutorials as well as lectures.
Yes.
And the tut was where you discussed the thing. And I can remember one professor saying, oh, for heaven's sake, you must have different views. We were studying the law of war and the writings of a Dutch lawyer, Hugo Grotius, Grotius, writing in the 1600s. And a lot of what he wrote then is settled law today. And we would ask, well, do you agree with that? You're the up-and-coming generation of lawyers, judges, politicians. So we were always encouraged, debate it, challenge it. And even if you agree with it, take the opposing side.
Absolutely,
and
because it gives you a better understanding taking the
does.
opposing side. I still remember one that went on for, I think, about 3 sessions, and it was cloning, right or wrong.
Oh,
and
yes.
Wow, there were so many aspects and facets of being able to examine that argument.
Yes.
And it got quite... it could get quite emotional and heated at times.
Good. Well, look, as we're getting near to time, let's just round up that freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of speech are not absolute, and you should be able to, and I think our society encourages people, be free in your speech, your religion, your association, but be mannered, be polite, and be accepting of someone who comes up to you and says, look, I've heard you, but I don't agree with you.
Yes.
I mean, we have a multi-faith society now.
Look, the funny one for me is that we might march or we might air our view, and then someone else says, no, I don't agree with you. You have the right to say we agree to disagree.
Yes,
and in essence, that is your integrity right there. I don't agree with your viewpoint. I don't think that that's fair. But you're entitled to.
Well, that is
your
to
opinion.
me still the strength of our lovely Australia.
It is.
That is the strength of it.
We better go to local news.
All
David
right.
Ashton Lewis, thank you very much for your
I
time
think it
this
should
morning.
become a newsreader column.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4CRB.com.